Boston happens to be, I think, maybe it was first mover and has become, as a result, a more robust center. But I think in particular, I would point to activity in Kendall Square. It just so happens that MIT had a particular specialty in molecular biology. And when life science moved from maybe the study of the systems of the human body down to the molecular level, there was a competitive advantage that MIT could offer in terms of the progress in life sciences.
And when that happened, there was all this science that was happening at MIT that moved across the street out of academia into a private company setting that just happened to be in Kendall Square. And that's how companies like Genzyme, Biogen, Integrated Genetics, Genetics Institute, Damon and Biotechnica and companies like Alnylam, that's how they were all founded, and it happened right here close to where the NIH funding was happening.
So the big moment, it was the completion of the Human Genome Project in the early 2000s. And a lot of that work was done around Boston, Cambridge, at the Broad Institute. At that moment in time, that changed the game for biopharma research, and that's what's really driven the growth. Novartis was the first to arrive, large Swiss pharmaceutical company who decided to move their R&D headquarters from Europe to Cambridge, and then the others followed suit. And so that the market, really has built up around that. Most of the work that's done here is genomics-based, with roots back to that project that was completed, 20 years ago at this point. And when you think about the herd mentality clustering, it's definitely true. So all of the competitors in the pharmas, there's 19 of the top 20 in the world that are here in Boston. It's because it's different, and there's research here that's happening that's not happening in other places across the globe.
We have the deepest pool of life science talent. We graduate more life science PhDs than any other cluster in the country. And I think we take for granted, too, that this industry has been developing and innovating for over 40 years, really starting in East Cambridge around MIT. So we've got a head start on every other cluster around the country in this space.
It's important to understand that the vacancy rate for existing lab space in the US is essentially zero right now. And so when you think about how tight of a market that is, and you combine that with the fact that life science companies can't do research remotely, can't do it from home, they actually need purpose-built facilities to support their research. It's a very challenging part of the process for these companies. And so when they have that funding, that Series A that comes in, and they want space the next day to get to work at their lab benches, and they go into a market that doesn't have any vacancy for 18 months, it's very challenging. And so what we've seen is that the larger venture capital firms actually have gotten ahead of that and have tried to control real estate in the core markets, where they can provide the companies that they're looking to invest in not just capital, but also visibility into real estate and lab space in a way that if you're just an individual company looking for 10 or 15,000 square feet, it's very, very challenging, if not impossible.
The core lab market is really only 22 million square feet, Lexington, Waltham, into the epicenter of East Cambridge. We've been at a 1.5% vacancy rate for the last several years, which basically means there's no space. In contrast, there's over 5 million square feet of tenants looking for R&D space in Greater Boston, which is why we are really excited about the 11 million square feet of space that's currently under development, because it's supply that is much needed to help this industry continue to grow in Boston.
It's one of the greatest places on the planet in terms of cluster formation. I look at the city and state support for what we are fostering here in terms of a deep science and tech community. I see an extremely deep bench of talent, not just some of the greatest entrepreneurs like Bob Langer, Henry Termeer, J.C. Gutierrez Ramos, David Walt, but I also see economic stimulus as a necessary component as well. So when you combine all of them, you create an innovation economy that can thrive in the fastest, most efficient way.
Pioneers of this industry that came out of academia, but when we really decided to take off, it's when government came to the plate, back in 2008. The creation of the 10-year, $1 billion Life Science Initiative was a game changer. We were good from academia standpoint. We were great from a scientific standpoint. We had a critical mass of companies, but what we didn't have was government as a partner. And the creation of the Massachusetts Life Science Center, the creation of a CEO position, and then that investment that the Commonwealth has made really, really put us on the map.
I see the hospital playing two key roles. Very much like the academic institutions, they're involved in basic research. So most of the teaching hospitals have a significant effort in terms of basic research in life sciences, where they are assembling talent and they are attracting capital to be able to provide that basic research activity as an anchor. In addition, the hospitals are also, with their patient population, capable of serving as a place where clinical trials can be held to test the efficacy of drugs that are being developed throughout the system.
If we weren't home to the best universities and hospitals, we would not be home to the best place in the world for the biotech and life sciences industry. Reason simple, this science comes from academic research. And we get here in Massachusetts, per capita, the highest amount of NIH funding in the country. When we started translating that science and licensing it to companies and creating companies. Science on a shelf has never helped a patient. It needs to turn into a company that ultimately will either fail or succeed, and when it succeeds, it helps the patient population.